All right, recording has started.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the February Data Reporting Managers Training. I am Carolyn Bosick, Team Lead. We're going to get started. We may finish up early and then open up the floor for questions, but nonetheless, we want to give you some good information this morning. Okay. This morning, we're going to cover some clarifications and submissions information, discuss indicators 4A and 4B, as well as indicators 9 and 10, and give you a couple of reminders. Okay. Just a reminder, we have about 10 districts that have not submitted their certifications. Certifications are due on Friday by close of business, and it should be emailed to the Special Education Services at ed.sc.gov email address if you have not submitted. There is an issue with the report type blank, and this error has been corrected. This is the fix. My apologies. This is the fix for indicators 7. No, I'm sorry, not 7, 11, 12, and my understanding was 14. But this is the step that you would need to take to correct the report type blank error. If you if you have followed these instructions and you're still getting the error, then you need to submit a ticket to support so that they can investigate behind the scene. But for the most part, going to the administration manager, South Carolina managed district and schools, select the school in which the report type is blank, and then select one of the three options. The SCH should be the default as a regular school within your district. Then you want to select an LEA if it's for like adult education, or if you have some special sort of alternative program school in your district that applies to all of the kids in the district. And then SEA if it's a state school that's in your district, okay? Once you click save, that should correct the error, save, and that should correct the issue. However, for indicator 7, they Frontline needed some additional information from our office in order to correct the report. So that should not prevent you from submitting your report. What it means is that the indicator 7 report will look similar to last year's. You'll see some of the issues that you saw last year. And once by the time we get to the April data quality check, that information should be corrected. So once again, this is the steps to resolve the issue or the error for the report blank. We do understand and are in communication with Frontline for those instance or those districts that are still having issues with the report blank and the data is populated in the system. Okay. The submissions for indicators 7, 11, and 12 for the data quality check, it is still due tomorrow, as well as indicator 14. Those reports are still due tomorrow. If you are a district that's seeing duplicates within your district, don't worry, because that is one of the things that we do look for at the state level before we finalize and cleaning the report. We do look for duplicates. There is an issue that's happening with the grade level. We want to make clear that during the 21-22 school year, the grade was not a required field, but however, for the 22-23 year, the grade level is a required field moving forward. And if you're having issues with the grade level being blank and it is populated, please submit a ticket to support. I do believe they have a solution for it, and they are correcting that information. So I just wanted to give that information to you. The reporting race ethnicity, I did want you guys to see that as long as the individual race ethnicity has at least one has a yes, and the reporting ethnicity and reporting state code are blank, it is okay because we can get the information we need from one of the 7 individual fields. So don't be alarmed when you look at your indicator 14 report and you see these reporting ethnicity state code and reporting ethnicity blank. Don't be alarmed. It is okay to go ahead and submit your report. With that in mind, that's all the submissions and clarifications that I have this morning. And we're going to turn it over to Joya.
Thank you, Carolyn. But before I go on, I see that there are some questions pertaining to what you just spoke about, and I think you can briefly respond. Someone said that all of a sudden this morning I had the grade level is blank errors appear in indicator 14. Any suggestions?
Okay, if the grade level is in fact in the system, and you're getting that error, submit a ticket to support. It is my understanding that they did discover a bug as it pertains to that, and there is a resolve. So submit the ticket to support, and they should get that corrected.
And lastly, someone said if they've already submitted, do they need to resend?
No, they do not.
Okay. All right, everyone, I'll be moving on with indicator 4, discussing significant discrepancy. The purpose of this indicator is to fulfill a federal equity requirement. It determines the existence and evaluates the rate at which overall students with disabilities in each racial or ethnic group disproportionately receive long-term disciplinary removals. Our goal within the Office of Special Education Services is to identify the districts with significant discrepancy occurring where the rate ratio will exceed a threshold of 2.5. All notifications for this indicator will be going out on the second Friday in May, which is the 12th. And the same will be true, as you'll see, for indicators 9 and 10 as well. Next slide, please. Okay, indicator 4 uses the data source from school year, which will be a lag year of 2021 and 2022. It uses the table 1 child count and table 5 for disciplinary removals. Next slide. Indicator 4 will take into consideration 2 rate ratios. They're designed to identify districts with the significant discrepancies in rates of long-term suspensions or expulsions. More specifically, we're going to look at out-of-school suspensions greater than 10 days. 4A will measure an overall rate at which suspensions and expulsions occur among students with individualized education programs within an LEA, while 4B will look more in depth at said rates among those students, but for each of the 7 reporting race ethnicities as listed. Next slide. Keep in mind the rate ratios provide a comparison in districts' rates of suspensions and expulsions to that of the state. So 4A is results driven. A district goal is to be less than or equal to the state's target. In this case, since we're using lag year data, we're looking at the 2021 target of 3.47%. Next slide. The methodology used for indicator 4A is that of a rate ratio. We will simply be using dividing the district's portion of the students with disabilities and out-of-school suspension greater than 10 days by those of the state. There's no minimum cell size requirement for indicator 4A, and it merely determines the rate at which an overall discrepancy will exist. Next slide. Now let's look closely at an example of indicator 4A. The illustration is a sample showing table 5 and disciplinary removals, which you'll see in gray, as well as table 1 child count in yellow. For training purposes, we'll review the calculating of 4A, where there's a total of 31 students with out-of-school suspension greater than 10 days on LEA 2 in our example. And again, that's there's 31 students out of 2,911 students enrolled within the same district to generate our numerator. Remember, since indicator 4 compares the district to the state, we calculate our denominator using overall state totals of 416 students with out-of-school suspension greater than 10 days. out of 106,314 students with IEPs. Dividing the district's numerator by the state's denominator will produce a rate ratio of 2.72%, which we see here exceeds the threshold of 2.5 by 0.22%. Next slide, please. Indicator 4B, unlike indicator 4A, 4B is one of compliance. It is calculated under each racial or ethnic group and must be equal to OSEP's predefined target of 0%. Next slide, please. 4B, evaluate also using a rate ratio, but in this case by race and ethnicity. The rates greater than 2.5 for any racial or ethnic group will determine the existence of significant discrepancy for said groups. Another differentiating factor aside from the race ethnicity in calculating 4B is the minimum cell size. The minimum in size requirement of 10 students with IEPs in the specific racial or ethnic group. In other words, if a race or ethnicity has fewer than 10 students in an LEA, we will not calculate, the rates will not be calculated, and we'll display it as NA on your notifications. Next slide, please. We'll look at an example of 4B using the same data, same district, LEA 2. It consists of 21 African-American students with out-of-school suspension greater than 10 days. If you take a look at the column heading BL7, out of 1,215 total for the specified race or ethnicity, which represents our N size with our formula. Comparing district to state, yet again, we reuse the same state denominator of 416 students divided by 106,314 students with IEPs. This formula will give us a rate ratio of 4.42%, also exceeding our threshold of 2.5 by 1.92%. Values highlighted in red, as you'll notice, they're here demonstrated with the racial or ethnicity groups for N sizes that are too small, and rate ratios will not apply. So you'll see an NA for those on notifications. Next slide, please. Now we'll go into indicators 9 and 10, which talks a bit about disproportionate identification, representation. Next slide. Oh, sorry. This one also, again, just as a reminder, has the same threshold and is due on the second Friday in May, the 12th. This is indicators 9 and 10, just like with indicator 4B, are also compliance indicators. So it's fulfilling a federal equity requirement, but 9 and 10 will measure the extent by which students with disabilities in each of the 7 race or ethnic groups are disproportionately identified as disabled or having a specific disability. And you'll see what those disabilities are specifically on the next slide. I'm sorry, not the next, but the subsequent slide. The data source for indicators 9 and 10 will be using current school year data, 2022 to 2023. From table 1, the child count, student enrollment as of the 45th day, and will only include ages 5 in kindergarten through 21 years of age. Indicator 9 identifies the disproportionality among the 7 races, while indicator 10 will delve into those same groups by each of 6 specific disability categories, being autism, emotional disability, intellectual disability, specific learning, other health impairment, and speech language. Next slide. Again, this as a compliance indicators, 9 and 10 are required to meet a state target, and they remain at 0% per the 5-year plan illustrated. Next slide. Measuring the risk. It's a bit tricky. Risk can only be measured where there is a valid denominator. So analysis of disparities required a calculation of risk ratio or an alternate risk ratio. Determining which use means asking a series of questions. So we provided this slide, and I'm asking that you retain this to just as reference for future. But in short, both the numerator and denominator of the upcoming formula must contain a minimum cell size of 10 and an N size of 30 to calculate risk for the district. When that does not apply, an alternate risk ratio is used, and it only applies when the condition in the numerator ratio are met, meaning both the numerator and the denominator of the numerator, but not in the denominator. Don't worry, the next few slides will simplify things for with examples. Next slide. And here we have our methodology for indicator 9. Specifically, we'll look at risk ratio. In risk ratio, we'll only first make an attempt to look at the district level data first. The formula highlighted in the yellow tells us specifically what data we'll be using. So when we're discussing cell sizes, we're referring to each numerators of the top ratio and the bottom ratio of the formula, while n sizes represents the denominators of each. Our first ratio is going to be that of LEA's child count in students in a given race or ethnicity, which will be that numerator, number 1, divided by the LEA's number of students enrolled in that race or ethnic group, which will be denominator number 1. This is all divided by the second numerator, in which the LEA's child count for all other races, meaning you would exclude the one being analyzed, is divided by the LEA's enrollment of all other races in the denominator. Next slide. One example will be a district whose Hispanic or Latin population consists of 518 students, ages 5K through 21, out of 4,317 enrolled. All other race or ethnic groups will consist of 685 students, ages 5K to 21, out of 11,285 enrolled. So let's take a look on the next slide of what that formula would look like. Setting up our information, looking at our numerators and denominators, we see that both the minimum conditions are met, where the numerators are greater than or equal to 10, and both denominators are greater than or equal to 30. So we can calculate for the risk. And we find here that this district, Hispanic or Latin children, are 1.98 times more likely to be identified as students with an IEP compared to students in this district who are not of that same race. Next slide, please. Earlier, I made mention that alternate risk ratios are only apply when district numerator conditions are met, but not its denominators. Conditions being that of the cell size 10, n size 30. So when the denominator fails to meet both conditions, we substitute the LEA's data with that of the state in the denominator. Next slide. So here's an example. Visiting our second example, this LEA contains child count of 52 Hispanic or Latin students, ages 5 through 21 with autism, out of 4,317 enrolled. Only a child count of 7 are all other races or ethnicities with autism out of 11,285 enrolled. Next slide. Setting that up, you see here that our numerator within our denominator does not meet the conditions of the cell size 10 and size 30. So that being the case, we would substitute that data as evidence on the next slide using an alternate risk ratio. Next slide, please. And we would actually get the outcome of 2.51. This indicates that 2.51 Hispanics or Latinos are 2.51 times as likely to be identified as students with autism compared to those in the state who are not of Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. Just as a tip, greater detail of this information that was displayed can also be found in the Connectors Guide. With district, and we shared this with the districts during our data conference in December of 22, and we've uploaded it via the Google Drive for those who were unable to attend. Next slide. And I think that concludes our training on indicators 4, 9, and 10. And I hope the information that we shared was helpful. But before we open up our platform to questions and answers to the data team, we'd like to leave you with a few reminders. Next month's data meeting will be on March 16th at 10 a.m. And note that the data quality checks for indicators 7, 11, and 12 are all due on the 17th of February and the 14th of April. Thank you for your patience and your attention, and now I'll turn it back over to Carolyn.
Thank you, Joya, for the presentation. I do want to mention that the data quality checks are optional. It is an opportunity for you to have us, the OSIS data team, to review your data prior to submission, with an understanding that if you correct as you go, and if we tell you what is wrong with your data, that your final submission will be more accurate. So once again, we do want to mention that it is optional. It is not required, but we do encourage districts to take advantage of the data quality check submissions. And now we will open the floor to anyone that has questions.
We have a question for, it says, do we count Gleams Head Start as an LEA school or school?
If children in that particular school or district have a disability and you included them on your child count, yes.
Karen also wants to know if Gleams or Head Start community students not enrolled should be coded as LEA.
An LEA is considered a district. It sounds as though Gleams may be a school within the district, if I'm understanding correctly. So Gleams itself doesn't sound like an LEA. It sounds like a school within the LEA.
And our microphones turned off for the participants, Albert.
Sure,
Carolyn, maybe we can fill the question.
Unmute
Yeah, and allow them to go ahead and chime in. We have another question that says, should warnings be corrected on indicator 7 before submitting them?
Participants can unmute themselves if they need to ask questions for clarification now.
We please understand that indicator 7 still have some logic that needed to be updated and corrected within the system. So for this data quality check, all of that, all of our updates and corrections may not be included, but it does not prevent you from submitting.
Susan, I'll let you go ahead and answer your question if your mic is off.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on indicator 14 submissions, if there is no student phone number listed and we get warning for it, and we do not have a student phone number, should we leave it blank or should we put a guardian phone number in place of it?
If there is a guardian or someone that knows where the student is and can give us the information, we will honor that information because the data is actually going to a vendor, and the idea is to have accurate information of someone who knows what the student is doing or have done within the past year upon graduation, so that we can get the information needed. So if you have it, yes. If not, we try to make sure that there's a valid phone number, email address, or some sort of means of contacting the student or the family to complete the survey. I do know that they do utilize social media if the students, if they're able to find said students on social media platforms as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any additional questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think Kathy still has some additional questions on the LEA for Gleams. Kathy, did you want to just come off mute to just kind of clarify? If not, Carolyn, what she's saying is that Head Start is not a school under the LEA. It is its own entity, but they have a MOA in place to serve students. Some of they're there a half a day, and they send a SLP, a speech person, sometimes for speech services, to their center.
And if I'm understanding correctly, that Head Start school will be a school under their LEA to identify said students. It would be similar to a community-based school within the district.
Hey Carolyn, it's Joan. Would we not, I mean, we have kids that are in other schools within our district. It's not necessarily a Glean situation, but I mean, we just have them coded as out of district.
Same thing.
Okay.
Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I've just coded them as out of district. But anyway, sorry,
Each
go ahead.
district has their unique way of capturing those students. As of right now, we don't have a standardized way to group set students, but in the future, as we compile information on pulling in those students that are served in a private school or community setting, we are looking to for districts to have a school within their district where they could just drop those students in to kind of group them together. So we're trying to put something in place that will give you guidance on how to do that moving forward when we get to that point.
And Carolyn, I just had another comment about indicator 14. I'm having trouble with a group of, just a handful of adult ed students. And, when adult ed kids enroll or adults enroll, they don't give you a whole lot of information, so they're kind of minimal. They don't have guardians because they're adult students and all of that. So I am having a little bit of trouble, finding some information on those kids. And then I did run into the grade level problem. I emailed you last week, I think. I can't even remember. And I did turn in a help ticket, but as far as I know, I don't think it's fixed yet.
Right. And we are in communication with them. I know that I submitted 4 clearances for them to go ahead and push a release to a couple of districts this morning that was having issues. But once again, if you've submitted, you will not have to go back and resubmit because we are aware of said issues and we can still get the information that we need until those issues are corrected. As it pertains to the adult ed kids, as long as you do due diligence to get the information on the students, that's all that we can ask.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And Carolyn, Kathy does not have a microphone, so so she's followed up again with another question. And just Kathy, for future reference, if you want to kind of be able to talk, you can also have an option of having it up and you can call into that number that's on the Teams invite. But her question is, Gleams is not operated by the district and their employees are not district employees. We send district employees to their center to provide service if they do not need our 3K half day or full day 4K. And she said, gotcha, thanks.
Okay. Understood. The scenario, regardless of what it's called, how they would provide services would still be the same. Whether they want to call it Gleams or community-based, they're sending teachers from within their districts out to serve said kids. It's just that as a state, as it stands right now, we do not have a uniform school to drop said kids into. So that could look very different in every district. And we're okay with that as long as the kids are being captured and served.
That's all the questions that I'm seeing in the chat. I think we've kind of covered those. If not, you're welcome to come off of mute to ask the question that we may have possibly overlooked in the chat. Or you can place that again in the chat so I can see that right away so that I can answer any questions, or Carolyn can answer any questions that you may have.
The questions does not have to be specific to this session this morning. If you have questions about anything as it pertains to your data, we will open the floor for you to ask those questions right now. Okay, if not, we thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to give you about 30 minutes of your morning back. As always, if you have any questions or if you need to contact us, our information was included on the last slide in the on the second to last slide in the PowerPoint. We have our phone numbers, our email address. Feel free to contact us always sooner rather than later if you have any questions about any issues or any clarification that you may need as it pertains to your data. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.